So it sounds totally counterintuitive, right? I mean, you'd naturally think that if a society figures out how to make money easier to produce, everyone in that society would just get richer. But history actually tells us the exact opposite. Whenever a society's money becomes easier to make, that society inevitably becomes poor. Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're exploring a fascinating concept that completely flips our everyday understanding of wealth, value, and economics right on its head.
Okay, let's dive right in. The source material for our analysis today is the highly influential book, The Bitcoin Standard by Saifedean Ammous. And what makes this text so incredibly compelling is that it doesn't just start with computers and code. Instead, it traces the entire sprawling history of money itself. By understanding the ancient, fundamental problems that money has always tried to solve, we can really start to grasp the truly revolutionary nature of Bitcoin.
To understand money, we've got to start with this core concept called salability. Throughout history, the absolute best money wasn't just dictated by a king or some central government. It was simply the good that naturally had the highest salability. Basically, that means it can be exchanged easily across three dimensions. Scales, meaning it can be neatly divided into smaller units. Space, meaning you can transport it easily. And time, meaning it's not going to rot or lose its purchasing power years down the road. But this brings us to an absolutely crucial question. What actually happens when money becomes easy to produce? The book calls this the easy money trap. It's basically a vicious cycle that has repeatedly destroyed the wealth of entire civilizations over the centuries. And to really understand how this trap gets sprung, we need to look at the underlying math of how money is made.
The book highlights this really critical economic equation, stock versus flow. Think of stock as the existing supply of a good, literally everything that's been produced in the past. Flow, on the other hand, is the new production coming into the market right now. The ratio between these two numbers, that is the ultimate test of money. A high stock-to-flow ratio means the new supply is just a tiny drop in the bucket compared to what already exists, which protects your wealth. But a low stock-to-flow ratio, that means producers can easily flood the market, instantly devaluing the currency and quietly destroying the wealth of anyone holding it.
The book actually shares some pretty vivid historical anecdotes of what happens when that stock-to-flow ratio collapses. For example, on Yap Island, locals used these massive, super heavy rice stones as money. Because they were incredibly hard to quarry and move, their stock-to-flow ratio was super high. But then, in the 1870s, a shipwrecked captain named David O'Keefe brought modern explosives and advanced boats to the region. He basically flooded the island with new, easily acquired stones, quietly extracting the locals' coconuts and resources while completely destroying their wealth. A similar tragedy happened in West Africa with rare glass agate beads. European explorers, who could mass-produce glass cheaply back home, flooded the African market with these beads, ruthlessly extracting the continent's real wealth.
Section 1. Gold and Government Fiat. So, to avoid that devastating easy money trap, societies naturally turned to gold. It basically won the free market due to its stubbornly high stock-to-flow ratio. It's just inherently hard to mine, but that dominance was eventually interrupted. The source uses this really powerful quote from economist Ludwig von Mises to highlight a huge pivot. Governments believe that when there is a choice between an unpopular tax and a very popular expenditure, there is a way out for them, the way toward inflation. This perfectly highlights the shift that happened during World War I. Governments needed to fund these massive war efforts without aggressively taxing their citizens directly, so they literally severed their currencies from the physical gold standard. This kicked off the modern era of government fiat money, where the money supply is controlled by policy rather than the physical scarcity of a metal.
And if we look at the historical track record, specifically the average annual broad money supply growth between 1960 and 2015, a pretty stark picture emerges. On one hand, we see developing nations suffering from intense hyperinflation. Take Nicaragua, which saw average annual growth of over 480%. But the book also points out that even the big global reserve currencies, like the US dollar and the euro, constantly increase their supply by an average of around 7 to 11% every single year. According to this analysis, fiat currencies function elastically. Their supply is constantly increasing, which acts like a slow, steady drain on the purchasing power of everyday savers.
Okay, so why does this actually matter for you and me? Well, the source details the systemic societal impacts of this elastic money supply, which it refers to as unsound money. Think about it. When your money constantly loses value, you're totally discouraged from saving for the future. This creates what economists call a high time preference, basically a society totally focused on immediate consumption. It also leads to malinvestment, where people take reckless risks just to beat inflation.
Plus, the book argues that giving a central authority the ultimate power to print money inevitably increases centralized control and even enables perpetual conflict, simply because governments can fund wars silently through inflation rather than through limited, unpopular tax revenue.
Section 2. Bitcoin, digital hard money. Fast forward to 2008, where a programmer under the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto engineered what the book argues is the ultimate digital solution to the easy money trap.
Nakamoto basically pulled this off by combining 3 brilliant technical steps. First, a decentralized peer-to-peer network where everyone shares the exact same ledger, meaning there's absolutely no single point of failure or central bank pulling the strings. Second, proof-of-work verification. This requires computers to expend real, physical electrical energy to process transactions, effectively making it incredibly costly to try and cheat the system. And third, and honestly this is probably the most important part, the difficulty adjustment.
The real magic of the difficulty adjustment is how it completely shatters the historical cycle that doomed those seashells and rhinestones we talked about earlier. Remember what happened when O'Keefe brought dynamite to Yap Island? Production got easier, and the money was totally ruined. Well, Bitcoin's algorithm does the exact opposite. If more processing power enters the network to mine Bitcoin, the algorithm automatically makes the math puzzles harder to solve. So more effort does not equal more coins, it just makes the network more secure. It is a completely automated, perfectly self-correcting defense against the easy money trap.
Because of this ingenious mechanism, Bitcoin has a hard cap on its total supply. There will literally only ever be 21 million Bitcoins, period. And the really crucial point here is that because nobody controls Bitcoin, this fixed supply is sovereign. Unlike fiat currencies that can be printed at a government's whim, or even gold, which usually sees a slight supply increase when mining technology gets better, Bitcoin is uniquely governed by consensus rules that no single entity can alter. The book argues this makes it an unprecedented and practically unhackable store of value.
Section 3. The future of sovereignty.
So what does all this complex code and deep economic history actually mean for everyday people like us? Well, for a world that's pretty much grown accustomed to routine currency debasement, the author argues that Bitcoin operates as a sort of decentralized monetary lifeboat. It provides true individual sovereignty, meaning you completely own your private keys. It is censorship resistant, so no bank or authority can just freeze your account or block a transaction. It allows for permissionless international settlement, letting anyone anywhere send value across the globe instantly. And finally, it offers real protection from unexpected inflation, preserving the purchasing power of your hard-earned savings over time.
I want to leave you with a pretty provocative final thought. For an entire century, central banks have enjoyed an absolute monopoly on the creation and management of money. But can they really maintain that monopoly in a digital age? We are currently watching an inevitable collision play out between centralized fiat economies and decentralized code that literally nobody can switch off. Whether you view Bitcoin as the ultimate evolution of money or just a fascinating digital experiment, its very existence fundamentally challenges how we think about the future of wealth.
If you enjoyed this, subscribe to In 8 Minutes and never miss what matters.